Welcome to the first devlog for what I hope is my very first commercial game, Retail Rampage. So I worked in retail for over 10 years and I have some stories that could probably generate a year's worth of videos on another channel, but I always wanted to capture the years of mayhem that I experienced while I was working in retail in a video game. Customers that have no respect for me or the store, work colleagues taking advantage of your time, and how busy it can get during the peak holiday seasons. Some days it really felt like you were deep in the trenches just trying to make it to the end of your shift. In Retail Rampage, you'll play as a manager who is tasked with operating the day-to-day of a store for as long as possible. This involves stacking shelves, hiring staff, and completing tasks, while also being able to deal with customers in any way you want. If you want to throw something at a difficult customer, you can, but it might lead to the loss of a sale. So I want to give the player the freedom to deal with a situation any way they want, while also maintaining the balance of the core game loop to keep the store open as long as possible. The idea for this game actually came to me as I was looking through an old folder on my hard drive that had a ton of uncompleted projects on it, and I saw one titled Retail Rampage. This was an idea I had almost immediately after starting my game dev journey. I've worked on different iterations of the game over the years, but could never really find a core game loop that I was satisfied with. But after watching some old videos I had taken of the development at the time, I found myself audibly laughing at some of the mechanics I had implemented. Some were just for fun, and others I had intended to develop on further. With that, I decided to revive this project and see where I could take it. So I wrote out a bunch of different mechanics I wanted into the game, and what I kept coming back to was COD zombies, but in a retail setting. So when playing zombies, the idea is that you start off in a very small area, you defeat some zombies, and you unlock new areas or weapons and try survive as long as you can. I wanted to take this core loop and apply it to my game. I almost wish I had created this back when I first thought about it, because there does seem to be a bit of buzz for some retail simulator games now, and I fear that I might be releasing into an already saturated market, but at the same time, I think that's going to be the case no matter when you release or what type of game you release, unless you're really tapping into a niche market. I think what's most important is that I try and make it my own and implement something that makes it stand out from the rest. So I had the bones of my idea, and now I just needed to execute on it. And this brought me to my first hurdle. I didn't know which engine I was going to use. For a long time, I had been using the Unity 3D engine for all of my projects. But when I was doing development series on YouTube, I began using Unreal Engine as I was always intrigued by it. As well as this, Unity was going through a bit of a rough time and it seemed like they were making all the wrong decisions. So I said I would build out a small prototype in both Unity and Unreal to determine which one I liked working in more. I built out a demo using Unity first. I wanted to create a very simple scene in a graveyard for another game idea I had back in the day. I built a character controller, used Cinemachine to control the camera, and I had a prototype up and running within a relatively quick time frame. But when I tried building the same project on Unreal, I kept running into problems because although I had started to learn the mechanics of the engine, I'd only really scratched the surface. Everything I tried to do felt like it was taking twice as long as it should, and this was mainly down to my understanding of the engine. I was also trying to build out the game using C++ instead of blueprints, and the documentation for C++ on Unreal is not great, and I tried to use ChatGPT at times to guide me in the right path, but it just kept leading to frequent crashes, and I realized then that if I really wanted to stick to my timeline of completing the game within a year, I probably shouldn't be learning how to use a new engine alongside the development of the game, so I chose Unity 3D. With this, I imported my old project into Unity 6 and played around with it in the state that it was currently in. The only issue was I never really understood what the core game loop was at the time. I could run around the shop, pick up certain items and use them, and watch the customers navigate the store to pick up their own items and buy them. But that was it. There was no substance to the gameplay. I never knew where I was going with it. And that's just because I never had a concrete game loop, from which I remember is why I stopped working on it in the first place. The logic for the customers buying the items was already there, so once the store gained enough budget, you could buy more items for the store or then expand the size of the store to try and generate more profits. I did like this idea, so I kept those mechanics and scrapped anything that I didn't like. I then contemplated building out this project that I had imported into Unity 6, but when I was looking through the code, I could barely make sense of it. The customer behavior logic was long and convoluted. There was no comments on any of my code. I tried changing things, but it seemed to break all the logic completely. So I ended up scrapping this whole thing and just creating a new project and reworked the customer logic into a much more readable state. I gave each customer a state that would determine their logic. This would then change depending on whether they were looking for items or not, queuing to pay, or looking for the exit. I got the very basics for this behavior working, but I'll very likely need to expand on it in the future as the game gets bigger. But for now, I like how the logic behaves. I knew going into the development this time that I wanted to add a task system, some logic to keep the player engaged while operating the day-to-day. For example, in Among Us, you can run around completing tasks on the ship while trying to identify the person who's sabotaging it. I'd like a similar element in my game to keep the gameplay fresh. Maybe you need to sell a certain amount of items in a day, or making sure customers aren't waiting in queues for longer than a certain period of time. Or maybe there's even a power outage and you need to fix it quickly before customers leave the store. This is just in the idea phase at the moment. It's something I want to implement but has not been implemented at this time. Once I was happy with how the customers were behaving, I got a little bit tired then of looking at the capsules and primitive shapes that I had in, and I wanted to start adding in some basic graphics to get a feel for what the game might look like with actual humanoids. I imported a character I was using from the Graveyard project and got him working with the logic. Again, I'll very likely change this character later into development, but for now, it's good enough to break up the monotony of the primitive shapes I was looking at. The next thing I wanted to work on was the actual store itself. I knew I wanted to have different sized rooms that could be used as a choice for the player when expanding the shop, but wasn't sure what the best way to tackle the rooms was. I'm not great at using Blender, so I didn't really want to have to make modifications there every time I had to change the layout of the stores. Instead, I came across the idea of using modular assets, which is the process of building all the pieces of the rooms separately, the doors, the windows, the walls, the ceilings, etc., and then building the rooms in Unity instead of Blender. This meant ensuring that all the building pieces were a certain size and snapped into place so that there were no gaps and overlaps when vertex snapping in Unity. This allows me then to customize and build various building sizes without needing to go back into Blender every time I want to change something. It also means that if I want to add any detailing to certain pieces, I can go in, edit it in Blender, overwrite the model that's there already in Unity, and every piece should still fit together nicely, providing I keep the dimensions of the object the same. Then, because I'm working on my own, I wanted to try and find a simplistic style that wouldn't involve too much work with texturing or UVs. And I remember seeing a video a long time ago about using a simple color texture atlas, which involved adding a bunch of different colors into an image and applying this to the material in Blender. This means I don't need to worry that much about creating seams in my models or to try line up the UVs with the texture. I can simply keep the UVs as a mess and move them into the color I want to apply to that section. It also means that I can use the same material for multiple projects in the scene. I haven't fully nailed down the look yet, so I'll probably spend some time in the future playing with the shaders to achieve a look that I'm happy with. But in the meantime, I've downloaded a popular shader pack called Toony Colors Pro 2. This pack contains all sorts of Toony styles, which also allows the user to create their own shaders. I haven't explored all details of the pack yet, but the out-of-the-box hybrid shader setting, along with some changes to the default lighting, achieves a style close to what I'm looking for now. The final thing I worked on for this video was the grab logic. All of the items in my game are using rigid bodies, and I was just setting their kinematic values when picking something up in my old project. This means that there are no collisions on the object when moving it, which I didn't really like. I wanted the objects to collide into other objects to prevent any weird issues like moving the object through walls. So instead, I applied some logic to my item's fixed update function so that the movement would be based on the current position of the item versus a relative position that's maintained on the player, meaning the item would programmatically be moved to that location, allowing me to keep physics enabled on the object. I feel it also looks better to have a small delay in the movement of the item rather than staying rigid in place, so I'm happy with the results for now. Yeah, and with that, that's everything I got working this month. I'm pretty happy with the progress I've made so far. There's still very early days. I spent a lot of the time just taking the mechanics that I had in my old project and trying to update them slightly, whether that was in terms of graphics or code. I feel like it's in a much better position than it was when I was working on it a few years ago, and I'm excited about the future of the project and where I can take it. The thing I'm currently working on now is the task system to try and give the player those random tasks to complete while also meeting certain targets. I want to have enough of them in the game so that it's not monotonous and it doesn't feel like a chore. I want to try and capture the hectic nature of what it is to be a manager in a very busy retail environment. So I'll work on that now, and I hope to have it implemented in the next video. I'd also like to tweak some of the lighting and add some basic sounds, but the task system is the priority for now. I would like to try and release a devlog every 2 to 4 weeks, but it really depends on workload. It wouldn't be worth creating a video explaining that I was stuck on a bug for the entire time, so I'll play it by ear and I'll try to get content out as much as I can when I feel it's relevant. But I'm very happy now so far with the progress, and it feels good to have a bit of pressure to work on the game, knowing that I've made my commitment public, so it's exciting to be working on a new project after some time away. So I'd like to thank everybody that's watched so far, and I hope you'll stick around for future devlogs. Thanks for watching.